G'day, I'm Paul. So the Isuzu D-Max, we've already reviewed the X-Terrain, but it's been updated for the 2022 model year. So today we're going to check it out, have a look at all the changes and see whether it's still worth spending money on. Now this right here, the X-Terrain, is at the top of the D-Max tree. It's priced at just under 66 grand. So the price has increased since we reviewed it the first time, and they've also adjusted some of the driveway offers. So just make sure you check to see what the exact pricing is when you do watch this. This competes with things like the Ford Ranger, the Toyota Hilux, the Mitsubishi Triton. There are lots and lots of competitors in the segment. Today we're going to do a detailed review of this ute, so if you do want to skip ahead to other parts of the review, you can use those time codes, or if you're on YouTube, scroll down and use the chapters below. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to our channel, press the bell icon. That's going to tell you every single time we drive one of these utes. Okay, so let's talk exterior. You get 8 different colors to pick from. All but white is an additional $500, but there are no changes to the outside for the 2022 model year. It's all sort of inside and also with GCM, and I'll run you through that in a second. So that means the rest of this design looks pretty familiar. So I'll quickly run you through it. You have this double-decker grille section. I know that I found this fascinating. I never actually noticed it until one of you guys in the comments section pointed it out, but there's 2 of these things here. I do wonder what it'd look like if there was just this top section, or just the bottom one. I don't know, it'd kind of give it a different appearance. I don't dislike this, I just think it's interesting the way that it looks. So you've got Isuzu along the top there, you've got all these big openings for cooling, and then you also have parking sensors nestled in down the bottom there. You've got this different color differentiation. So you have the body color, a darker color here, and then a lighter silver color there with piano black on that grille section. Over with the headlights, you have bi-LED headlights with LED daytime running lights. You also have fog lights down the bottom here with an indicator built in that bottom section. Unfortunately, despite a lot of the lights in this car being LED, they still do have some incandescent globes here and in the back, which, I don't know, if you're going to go LED, you may as well just do everything LED and not just have these random little globes that you'll have to replace more frequently. So, all right, we'll whip around to the side. Down here, you've got a set of 18-inch alloy wheels. You've also got these wheel arch guards up the top there, so fairly chunky, and they're offset from that body color. Love this red. I haven't seen an X-Terrain before in this red. I've only really seen the orange color and a few other sort of colors, but this red actually looks pretty cool and offsets nicely with that sort of body arch protection there. You've got a set of highway terrain tyres. Now let's talk about this wheel design, because Isuzu initially said that they were looking at offering an accessory wheel for the X-Terrain for people that didn't like this, but it doesn't look like they've actually done that at all, so you're stuck with this design. So some people love it, some people hate it, but it is just worth keeping in mind that if you do want a different design, you're gonna have to fork out your own money to do that. But look, often what people will do is buy the new wheel, leave these in the shed, and then when they go to sell the car, they'll swap it back over. So it might not be a bad idea. Up the top here, we've got an indicator built into that wing mirror. You can again see you've got that sort of plain plastic down the bottom there, and that same color as the wheel arches along the top. You don't have any cameras or anything built in under here because they don't have a 360 camera available for this just yet. Now on the side steps down here, look, they look okay, but if you are doing some proper off-roading, you're probably going to damage those pretty quickly. I'd love to see something like the Raptor side steps here, big, chunky, meaty side steps that really give you the ability to hit rocks and climb onto them and all that sort of stuff. You've got roof rails up the top here. You've got a sail plane, so they've added some stickers here. I don't think that was standard on the 2021, but the sail plane has a plastic outer surround on it. You can't really hook anything onto that. It's here just as a decorative piece. More of those wheel arch protection, 4x4 on the side there, and if you come around to the back, you've got an X down here, which signifies X-Terrain, 3-litre turbo diesel, because that is the engine fitted to this. There is a 1.9-litre diesel coming, which we'll review in the coming months, and I think that'll be an interesting step down. It may not be sort of as grunty as this, but it will be more affordable and probably more fuel efficient as well when it's finally launched. And then Isuzu D-Max on the side there. Let's talk about the tray. So up the top here, you've got this roller cover that you can push out of the way. A little bit noisy, and then it comes with a rope as well to pull it back in. The actual tailgate itself has the camera built into it there, and then the handle that drops down. Unfortunately, no torsion bar over here. It is becoming common theme now in a lot of utes to add that torsion bar to make it easier to open and close this tray. So it is missing out on that. But inside the tray, you do have some hooks off to the side, little channel here to collect water so it doesn't come into the tray itself. And then in terms of the tray dimensions, it has a load length of just under 1600 millimeters. You've got a load width of a little over 1500 millimeters, and then a little over 1100 millimeters between the wheel arches. You have a payload of almost 1 ton. And as part of the 2022 model year changes, the GCM has increased by 50 kilograms to 6,000 kilos. So that gives you just a little bit more capacity. You also still have a 3.5 ton braked towing capacity. So we are inside the D-Max. Let's run with the key first. So here it is here. You've got a remote start function up the top there. Lock, unlock, blank down the bottom. Got a little bit of metal trim around there. Then on the back, you've got Isuzu. It's a proximity sensing key. So you leave that in your pocket. Once you're inside, you have a push button start. And then this little key here. This is for your cargo cover, so you can lock that so no one can get inside and steal your goodies. Now, what about the design? So I did mention in our last D-Max review, I reckon this is completely chalk and cheese compared to the last D-Max. It's a huge step forward in terms of design, but also just in terms of the fit and finish and premium materials used here throughout the cabin. So talking about stuff like here on the dashboard, it's all nice and soft touch. You've got that stitching along the top there. You've also got these materials that, I don't know, they're scratchy plastic, but they're not sort of offensive. They actually look nice and soft through there. And then as you come down, you do have a fair bit of piano black around here, which I'm not a massive fan of, but it's there anyway. But I do think this is nicely presented. Now, part of the model year 22 changes are things like the red stitching here on the steering wheel. That continues along the dashboard there. I think in the previous one that was like white or something like that. It's red on the seats and also this gear lever. They've also changed some of the silver highlights that were around the air vents and the steering wheel. So that's all been piano blacked, so there's just more piano black as we go, not less. We've also got some changes here in the gauge cluster as well, the little X down there as well. So visually it looks very similar to the model year 21 Isuzu D-Max X-Terrain. Now, what about our touch points? Well, that feels good there and not too bad on the door. How soft are they? Well, we've got our durometer. We've tested the main surfaces in this cabin. If you want to see how this car compares to others that we've tested before, have a look at the link in the description. Builds quality. Righto, let's see what this is like. That feels not too bad. A little bit of flex there in the center, but it's not too bad. Oh, that's pretty solid as well. So D-Max has been out for a little while now. How has yours been going if you have already bought one? Has it been okay? Have you had any dramas with it? Let me know in the comments section. And what about our door test? Nice and solid. Righto, let's talk infotainment. So up the top here, you've got a 9-inch infotainment screen. So it's a color touch screen, and then you have shortcut buttons down the bottom here. Comes with inbuilt satellite navigation, and you also have voice recognition. There's AM, FM, and DAB plus digital radio. So that means you do have some pretty good coverage there in terms of audio. In addition to that, you also have the ability to hook up a USB audio device, an auxiliary audio device, and then also stream through Bluetooth. And on the smartphone mirroring front, you have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. The good news about Apple CarPlay is that it is wireless, and that means that I honestly don't know what all this music is. I didn't download that. So yeah, full screen integration. Tiny bit laggy as you go through those screens, but for the most part, it's not too bad. And the good news is with the voice recognition that it does it through your phone. So if you do have Siri or the Google equivalent of Siri, it's doing that via the cloud. It means you're getting far more accurate voice recognition. You can send text messages and do all that kind of thing. So look, I do like this infotainment system. It just can be a little bit annoying sometimes. What I've noticed is that once you get into the car and it connects to Apple CarPlay, which it does automatically once you hop in, it switches your audio to Apple CarPlay instead of the radio. So you have to then get out of it, go into the sort of radio again, and then go back into CarPlay. So I don't know, it's a tiny bit clunky. Now, I am curious, just very quickly, Ford has just released a new Ranger. They've got that giant infotainment system. Are you a tech person? Do you prefer a giant infotainment system, or do you prefer something smaller like this that's easier to use? Let me know in the comments section below. And this is what Android Auto looks like. So again, a full screen integration. It feels a little snappier than CarPlay, which is good news. And it's all plumbed through an 8-speaker sound system with live surround sound. Now, let's talk about the screen here ahead of the driver. It's a 4.2-inch display. This gives you basic functionalities such as your engine temperatures, fuel economy, range, and your four-wheel drive controls as well. Now, what about your safety tech? You've got autonomous emergency braking with pedestrian and cyclist detection. You've got an auto-dimming rear vision mirror now, so this is new to the range. You've also got a center airbag here. This prevents occupants hitting each other in a side impact. There's also radar cruise control. You have rear cross traffic alert, lane departure warning, and a lane keeping assistant. But there is something exciting. I did complain about this in our last review with the lane keeping assistant. It's not a very good system. It kind of keeps pulsing you back into the lane even when you are already in the lane. To turn it off, you had to basically go through all of these menus and faff about with everything, and it was really frustrating. Now all you do is push and hold this button here and it disables it. Now this is part of the model year 22 upgrade, but given it's the same button it's always been, I don't know why this can't just be applied to other models with a software upgrade. So maybe they're going to roll that out eventually. Who knows? Got a blind spot monitor built into that wing mirror. You have front and rear parking sensors and a reverse view camera. I'll show you what the camera looks like. There it is there. So pretty decent quality. Yeah, so it's not terrible. You've also got these guidelines as well to help you getting into parks, and a very clear view there for the trailer when it comes to rigging up your trailer, but no 360 camera here. Moving on to practicality, and we'll start with your connectivity options. So down the front here, you have one USB port, one auxiliary outlet, and a 12-volt outlet. Would have liked to see another USB port down here, I reckon. Just the one's kind of not enough. You do have a tray down here for your phone. No wireless phone charging, but it does fit into there pretty easily. Your phone can also be stored here in the cup holder without any dramas. Coffee cup. So watch this. It disappears, and your lid will disappear as well if you go to get it. So not the best spot because it is quite deep and there's no teeth on the side there, but they do have a solution, and that is cup holders in front of the air vents. So you can slot your coffee cup in there if you need to, and it means that it will stay warm on a cold day and it will stay cool on a hot day. I'm just trying to get my head around that stuff. So there is an option there if you do need it. In terms of your other storage for bottles, your bottle can easily live in there without any dramas, but like I said, there's no teeth, so it does move around a little bit. You can also fit your bottle inside the door. We'll try our big bottle. Let's see how that goes. So it doesn't fit in the center there, but it does fit inside the door, which is good news. I'll get that out of the way. Other storage, so you've got this center console, reasonably sized, it's not too bad. You've also got this storage spot down here. Then you have a box up the top here. It's now easy to open. I remember the last D-Max, you had to kind of, do a push and a pull at the same time to get that to open, but that is very straightforward. You've got a glove box down here. There is no room in there at all once you've got the manual, but you do have a second glove box just above it with enough storage there for bits and pieces. And then finally, you have a sunglasses holder up the top. It's worth pointing out as well that the 22 upgrade brings you lights inside your vanity mirrors. Now let's talk about comfort. You've got dual zone automatic climate control. Finally, there's heated seats. Look at this. You've got buttons there for your heated seats, which is good news. You've also got electric seat adjustment for the driver. So it goes forwards, backwards, backrest goes forwards, backwards, seat goes up and down as well. You also have a lot of seat comfort because when you're driving in this, they just hug you in beautifully. And for long distance drives, it's a good place to be seated. I've done a few long distance drives in D-Max since it launched and been pretty impressed with seat comfort and how they feel. And they're also perforated as well, which means on hot days, you don't have to really sort of peel yourself off the seat. It just you just come off nicely, and there's enough sort of aeration there. In addition to the heated seats, I've also added heating for the wing mirrors. So if it is frosty in the morning, they will sort of defrost nice and quickly as well. So you do have all bases covered. Now, in terms of steering wheel, it offers both tilt and reach adjustment. And on our reach test, all of this stuff is easy to reach while you're driving. So before I hop in the back, let's talk about what you got back here. So these lift up in an interesting way because you can lift just this side, which gives you access to a little storage nook down here. Then what you can do is lift this side as I drape myself across the seat, and you've got another storage nook under there. And if you do have kids, you have ISOFIX points on the two outboard seats and also two top tether points, and you access them behind here through this thread. So they basically go through there and then connect into the center. That's also where you'll find your jack, but no real storage space behind here. Now, in terms of room, use a handle to hop in. Let's see what it's like. So look, knee room is okay. It's not amazing. I'm sort of There is like a gap there. I am comfortable, but if this seat was any further back, I'd be sort of sitting with my knees in there. Toe room is average, not that fantastic, and headroom is reasonable, but not amazing if you're any taller than I am. Outside of that, you do have some creature comforts back here. So you've got 2 map pockets, you've got air vents, a USB outlet there, it's a USB-A outlet. You've also got a hook here to hold, you know, stuff like shopping and bags and other random things. You have a center armrest here with 2 cup holders, and that holds a bottle without any dramas. No teeth though, so that does move around a little bit, and you can pop this inside of the door if you need to. But look, outside of that, it's actually not a bad place to be seated. It is fairly comfortable, and I've got good visibility out the sides as well, which means I won't feel claustrophobic while you know, I'm relegated to the back while my mates are driving and doing fun things up the front. So we're on the road in the D-Max. So with the model year 22, there's no changes to the engine. So you're getting the same 3-litre turbocharged 4-cylinder diesel, makes 140 kilowatts of power and 450 Newton meters of torque. So that is more than the outgoing model, but it's still a bit short on the rest of the competitors in this segment. They all produce about 10% more torque at around that 500 Newton meter mark. And look, it's not the end of the world. The 6-speed auto that this is mated to, and by the way, the 6-speed auto is the only gearbox you can get in the X-Terrain. It does a good enough job, but you know, if you sink the boot in, look, it does sort of pin you back in the seat. It's really not that bad. I just think when you've been spoilt with 500 Newton meters, you kind of feel that top edge missing a little bit, and you'll notice it most when you're towing and have a load in the tray. I think that's where the 450 is going to feel the most different to 500 Newton meters. And how does that gearbox feel behind the wheel? Look, it's pretty good. It can be a little lazy at times, but it does take the advantage of the torque band of the engine. So instead of dropping back through gears, I can lean on the throttle and it will just progressively feed in that torque, and it doesn't have to hunt, which is, I guess, one of the advantages of not having 10 speeds to deal with like you do in the Ranger. Isuzu doesn't have an official 0 to 100 time, but this is how it went up against our stopwatch. Isuzu claims a combined fuel economy of 8 litres per 100 Ks. We are currently sitting on 11.9. I will mention that we have been doing our off-roading before we went on our drive, and this car is brand new, or pretty much brand new. It's under 100 kilometres old, so I do expect that fuel use to settle a little bit. I know when I've done a lot of highway driving in these before that they settle around the sort of 9 litre per 100 K mark, so pretty efficient, and you should get about 1,000 Ks out of a tank if you're hitting those numbers. Let's talk about the ride. So D-Max comes standard with a 3-leaf rear suspension setup. Generally, the less leaves that you have at the back, the smoother the ride should be. And in this instance, it is smooth. So it can feel a little bit brittle on some of the corrugations you'll find on a country road, but it is softly sprung, just slightly firmly damped. But for the most part, it is pretty comfortable, especially in and around the city. You can whack speed humps, potholes, all that sort of stuff. You don't really feel anything inside the cabin. Then in terms of road noise, so it's pretty quiet in terms of tyre noise, but where it is a bit noisy is the engine. So it's making a fair old racket coming into the cabin. So it is something that you do notice when you do lean into the throttle and try and sort of keep up with traffic. And then on the visibility front, I can see clearly down the fronts of the car there. The wing mirrors are massive, so good visibility down the side. You've got a blind spot monitor there. Visibility is excellent out the rear as well. Keep in mind when you do, get to parking and that kind of thing, you've got front and rear parking sensors, a reverse view camera, and the steering is incredibly light at low speeds. It means that it is very easy to place the car when you do need to. You don't have any drive modes, but I will just call out your driving modes. So you've got a 2-wheel drive high range, and that is for sealed surfaces. So unlike stuff like the Triton, which has the Super Select 4-wheel drive system, you can't drive this in 4-wheel drive high range on sealed surfaces because you can do damage to the car. So just keep that in mind. We did shoot a video on 4-wheel drive controls that I'll run through a little later on. There's a link in the description as well if you do need to catch that, and that will explain why you can't do that. But you also have a 4-wheel drive low range, and I'll demo some of these when we do our light off-road section. Just on steering feel, they've ditched the hydraulic steering rack and you now have this electrically assisted steering rack. The steering is very light, and look, I think that's good for low speed maneuvers such as parking and that type of thing. There isn't a great deal of steering feel, and that is because, you know, they've made it as light as they possibly can. So it's kind of polar opposites to something like a Ford Ranger, which has just a little bit of meat to it. So I think some people are either going to like or dislike that depending on their driving mood. You don't have any drive modes. You can select gears manually by doing this, but let's see how it goes through our corner. It's kind of fun. It's not a Ferrari, but it holds its own okay when you do punt it through a corner. That's a good thing with dual cab utes. They're sort of big and cuddly enough that you can, you know, throw it around a bit without it snapping oversteer or doing anything you're not going to expect it to do. So let's do a little bit of light off-roading in the D-Max. Let me run you through the specs first. So nothing's changed with the model year 22, so it all stays the same. I mentioned down on the road that you have a number of different drive modes in terms of where you're sending drive, but these are the only ones that you want to use while you're off-roading. So two-wheel drive high range is for on-road driving, or you know, if you're going down a very basic gravel road and you don't want to switch into 4-high. But 4-high is what you want to be using on unsealed surfaces. You also have 4-wheel drive low range. You have a rear differential lock, only works in low range. You have a hill descent control as well. Then in terms of your ground clearance, 240 millimeters of clearance, which is the amount of space you have before you start hitting anything underneath the car. You have an approach angle of 30.5 degrees. That's the angle of the face you can approach before you hit anything at the front of the car. And then a 24.2 degree departure angle, which is the same but in reverse. And finally, you have an 800 millimeter wading depth as well. Now, if none of that makes any sense to you, we actually shot a video that explains 4-wheel drive controls with a D-Max. You can click up here to watch that, and that will run you through all of that and when you use all of these controls. But let's flick over to 4-wheel drive high range for the moment. You can see it activate down there. What I'll also do is bring up our 4-wheel drive screen. That will tell us exactly what the car's doing and which mode it's in. And we'll start off with the log mounted. It's all pretty dry, so it shouldn't be too much of a drama getting up here. I've got everything just in the standard sort of drive mode, so it's managing it all on its own, but you can change gears manually if you need to. We are on highway terrain tyres, so if you are planning on doing any off-roading, the first thing I'd probably change is the tyres to give you just a little bit more latitude while you're off-road. You can see just there, highway terrain tyres will sometimes get a little bit stuck because they don't have a great deal of grip available in comparison to an all-terrain tyre. All right, we've crested the top here. I'm going to kill that parking sensor. We'll pop the hill descent control on and we can see how that goes on the way down. Okay, here we go. So we've got some deepish ruts here and I want to see how fast the hill descent control goes on the way down. Yeah, look, it's probably a little quick for my liking because it's kind of throwing us about a touch. No, it's not terrible. Like it could just be a touch slower. With some of these cars, I just wish there was a way to adjust the speed of the descent instead of having just the one set speed that the manufacturer decides. So yeah, it is okay. It's just not ideal in terms of speed adjustment. Okay, next up we have our offset mogul and our seesaw. Now what I'm going to do here is I've deliberately left this in two-wheel drive, and I do this in most utes because it gives us a really good chance to see how the traction control system works when it is limited in two-wheel drive and we have a wheel off the ground. But before we do that, we've got our center section here where the car is at full flex. There it is, just there. I can feel it sort of teetering. We'll see if we can open and close these doors easily. Yeah, no problems there. So the weaker utes with weaker chassis, you won't be able to close the door properly. That is the big difference there. This seems fine though. We'll whip through to the other side. On the other side here is where we're going to get that rear wheel in the air, and we want to see how well the traction control deals with that wheel being in the air before you have to lock a diff lock. So there it is, just there. That wheel is off the ground. Just going to lean onto the throttle now. So traction control is biting, and you can see the revs dip there as the traction control bites. I'm going to just gradually put more and more throttle on, and eventually it's going to pull us out of there just using traction control alone. So yeah, look, not a bad setup. We'll go through that once more just in four-wheel drive high range, and we'll see if that helps that situation as well, because in four-wheel drive high range, it's sending 50% of torque to the front, 50% of torque to the rear. And in that situation where you do have two wheels kind of teetering off the ground, it has to figure out how to do its thing involving traction control as well. Okay, take two this time. I have it in four-wheel drive high range. We'll get it set up in that condition again with the wheel off the ground, which is just there. And then I'll do the same thing. I'll just ease off the brake and onto the throttle. We'll see what happens. So remember, no diff is locked at the moment. We just have it in four-wheel drive high range. So it's sending 50% of torque to the front, 50% to the rear. It's kind of doing the exact same thing, which is a little disappointing. I would have hoped that in this mode, it will actually utilize the front axle a whole lot more to pull the car out, but it's just spinning that wheel and waiting for the traction control to intervene. So yeah, look, it's not the most intelligent four-wheel drive system in the world. I would have hoped it would just pull through that without me having to really sort of get onto the throttle. Righto, next up, we have a test. It's kind of just a little bit further than the basic off-road stuff that we do, and now that it's dry, I can safely do this. It's basically a concrete hill. It doesn't look all that technical, but what it does have is offset divots, and as the car gets closer to the top, it's forced to use the rear wheels to drive it up the hill when the front lifts off the ground. So it does rely on the traction control systems working really well, and it also relies on our rear diff lock too. So what I'm going to do is go into low range. You achieve that by popping it into neutral, going into 4 low, and all of these light up. So basically here it's saying that traction control is off, stability control is off. We're in four-wheel drive low range. I'm going to set myself up the hill, engage the rear diff lock, and we'll see what happens. Okay, here we go. So we climb, pick our line through here. We'll drop off a little off the side there. And as we get closer to the top is where it starts grappling for grip. There's that front wheel lifting as we pile on a bit of throttle. So I got up there without any dramas. What we find is that as it's climbing, it has to use that rear diff lock because some of the holes that it falls into forces it to send all of that torque to the rear axle, and that means that it's really just driving the car up the hill because the front wheel is off the ground. So it is good that it got up there without too many dramas, and all you do is just lean into the throttle. So the four-wheel drive system in this is pretty good once you switch the traction control off, because that seems to be the weak link of the four-wheel drive system. So the 2022 D-Max, it's kind of the same as the last D-Max. It really hasn't changed all that much, but that's not a bad thing. They've added the features that it was missing to start with. And when this car launched, it actually really set a benchmark for the segment. But it is let down by the engine ever so slightly. I think it could do with just a tiny bit more punch, and I was hoping that now when this launched, they would maybe take this opportunity to wind the wick up a little bit on that and give it 500 Newton meters. Look, it's not the end of the world, but it could just do with a tiny little bit more. I'm interested to see what you guys think. So you've seen the new Ford Ranger, and if you haven't seen our detailed video, click up here to watch that. Do you think that that should be cause for concern for all the other ute manufacturers, especially with the interior in the new Ranger and the V6 diesel? Do you think that the rest of these guys need to start doing some catching up? Let me know what you reckon down in the comment section. And if you have bought a D-Max, let me know how it's going. What's it like as a longer term proposition, and have you enjoyed it so far? Now, if you did enjoy this video, please make sure you hit like and share it with your mates. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon. But until next time, take it easy.